21 days, 3,488 kilometers, and only one Maglia Rosa. That is what awaits the 184 riders that will start the first Grand Tour of the season, the Giro d'Italia, this Saturday in Torino. Who will succeed to Tao Geoghegan Hart? Will Remco Evenepoel live up to the hype? And can Vincenzo Nibali do well at his age of now 36? Those are questions that we will be answering on the preview of the Giro d'Italia here on the Ascent cycling channel. But once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Tim Soski. Joe, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling absolutely excellent, thank you, Guillaume. It's great to be back on the pods, back discussing cycling, ahead of a very exciting Giro, I must say.
Very interesting Giro indeed. A Giro with quite a lot of question marks around it, mainly regarding the potential winners of the Italian Grand Tour. But I believe we have quite a few things to discuss, but I am also very glad to be back for the first time since the UAE Tour. But we are now back back for good, should I say, back by popular demand for, the first Grand Tour of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while, like you say, on the Ascent, but hopefully we'll be back more regular now and with some good content coming. So, I mean, the Giro d'Italia, part of the reason I think it's so interesting this year is because almost anyone could win this race for me. It's so wide open. The GC, there's no big out-and-out favourite. For example, at the Tour de France, we have Roglic, Pogacar. Those two guys are clearly above the rest. So I don't feel like we have a similar situation here, which for me makes the race really, really interesting.
I would tend to agree with you. And taking a very rapid glance at the start list, most of the GC leaders haven't really performed at the top level this season, and also not all of them have had races recently. I mean, if we take a look at Egan Bernal, who on paper could be the biggest favourite, his last race was on Tirreno, and it was a bit of an underwhelming performance. So there's quite a lot of questions around it. Obviously, Remco Evenepoel, who is making his Grand Tour debut this year, also making his debut this year as his season goes. So yeah, a lot of questions around the GC, and I feel like it is adding some spice, some interest around the whole race, rather than the Tour de France, where you mentioned we don't know who's winning it, but we can basically bet our money that someone from Slovenia will do.
Yeah, for sure. But you mentioned Bernal there. I mean, he hasn't raced for a while. He was obviously very underwhelming at the Tour last year. He has looked a bit better this season. But also, in the Ineos lineup, we have Pavel Sivakov, Ivan Sosa, Dani Martinez, as well as, of course, Pippo Ganna. So they always have a deep team, we know that. But who do you feel are their best options in the GC? Do you think they should just go for Bernal? Or do you think maybe one of those other guys have a chance for them?
Realistically, I think you go for Bernal. No matter what, you go for Bernal, and I don't think within the first week you will have immense gaps between someone like Bernal and probably Sivakov, who I'm sensing could be the co-leader. If Bernal doesn't feel well, then I think you could potentially switch to Sivakov, but your main focus in the first week also is to have your Colombian in the best possible position coming into the mountain stages.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because they went all in for Bernal last year, so I feel like they don't want to make that same mistake again at the Giro this time, of course. So I think they should give Sivakov a bigger role. And even Dani Martinez, he hasn't really led a Grand Tour, but I feel like he's more than just a domestique. I feel like he could play a bigger role too. So yeah, I feel like they have a few options. The other team you mentioned is the Koenig Quickstep, and they have Remco Evenepoel, who hasn't raced since he crashed out at Il Lombardia last year. Like you said, he says he's trying to get ready. He's been saying for the last few months his goal has been to be ready for the Giro d'Italia. But I mean, Guillaume, do you know of a time where a rider has won a Grand Tour or even podiumed a Grand Tour after not racing at all beforehand that year? I mean,
I'd be lying if I said I did. And also, I think it's common sense that the best kind of training, the best the best way to get in shape is to have competition. All right, training and the Sierra Nevada, that's good, but you're not in a peloton. You're not in a race experience. And I feel like you might be in shape, but you probably won't be as ready as you think you are because you have no experience of being in the peloton since I think the month of October. So that's 7 months ago. That's a long time in cycling.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like De Koning and Ineos have kind of similar situations here because Bernal and Remco, if at their best, they're two big favourites here, but there's question marks over them. Whereas the likes of Joao Almeida, Sivakov, they've been racing well this season. So, I mean, you've got to try and keep your options open, I feel, if you're these teams. Try to even keep Masnada up there. Why not? He came third at Romandy recently, so I feel like Almeida, Masnada, Martinez, Sivakov, these guys could have bigger roles to play than some people are really thinking, even though on paper, Bernal, Remco, they should be the leaders.
100%. And you mentioned them having similar teams. I'd even go to say they have symmetrical teams because they have one main leader whose fitness we have question marks about. We've got co-leaders whose fitness we know are good. We've got one rider key for the time trial element. And you've got a supporting cast in very good shape. You've mentioned Masnada for De Koning. We could also mention Gianni Moscon on the Ineos team, who's had a very, very good Tour of the Alps with, I believe, 2 stage wins. So it is a very, very similar lineup. No hopes as well for the sprints for both of these teams. So I suppose Ineos and De Koning will play a massive role when the road will go up.
Yeah, they will. I like that you mentioned the time trial guys too. We'll get more into that later with Ganna and Cavagna, of course. But apart from those two teams, I think we're probably looking at Simon Yates maybe as another top favourite for Bike Exchange. He definitely doesn't have the same type of support. I mean, Mikkel Nieve, Nick Schultz, they're not quite the same calibre probably on paper. But Simon Yates has been riding so well this year. He won the Tour of the Alps, of course, recently. He, I think, was second on the Prati di Tivo at Tirreno as well, just behind Pogacar. So he's climbing well. He's climbing pretty consistently too. So I feel like Simon Yates comes in as one of the favourites in the most consistent form, would you say?
I'd say as of right now, as the 4th of May, Simon Yates is the main favourite based on fitness and based on the form he's shown. But the lack of supporting cast, I mean, he's got Daniel Kangert, he's got Mikkel Nieve, but they're not exactly the kind of riders you could find in an Ineos team, or even Baron Victorious, who we probably will delve on in a bit later. But yeah, on purely fitness-wise, Yates seems like over the moon. His Tour of the Alps was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Simon Yates as well looks like one of the top favourites for sure. We'll get into our predictions as well pretty shortly, I guess. But you mentioned Bahrain Victorious there. On paper, for me, they have one of the strongest teams at this race because Mikel Landa, we know what he can do. One of the best climbers in the world for sure. Hashtag free Landa, as we know. But apart from that, Pello Bilbao has been riding so well, and his descending skills, I didn't realise he could descend like he did at the Tour of the Alps, Guillaume. I mean, Bilbao as well was 5th last year at the Giro, so he's no slouch. He can ride his own GC race if Landa falls off a cliff, and also Caruso, without mentioning Gino Marder, the youngster. So these guys have plenty of depth in the mountains. I feel like they could be going under the radar a bit, to be honest.
That lineup from Bahrain Victorious is unreal because you've mentioned Landa, Bilbao, who came second of the Tour of the Alps, and only I think a minute behind Simon Yates, knowing that now he'll be technically from where we are right now a teammate for Landa. Caruso, Gino Meda, who was very decent Paris-Nice, Matej Mohoric, who was in shape during the Ardennes, and also Jan Tratnik, who's doing a lot of work right now. I think he's going very much under the radar because he doesn't really have the results, so people probably overlook his season. But Jan Tratnik is a rider that could be key for a whole 3 weeks race.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And even could get another breakaway stage win. But yeah, looking elsewhere on the start list at the GC favourites, I'm not sure where else to go, to be honest, because there's quite a few teams with chances. For example, Alex Vlasov at Astana. We saw him really at the Vuelta last year. Staying with the Vuelta, we've got Hugh Carthy and Dan Martin, who are 3rd and 4th, respectively. So, I mean, they're not really being talked about too much here, but I think they have their own chance as well. Without mentioning, again, Emmanuel Buchmann, who's, as we know, was 4th at the Tour de France 2 years ago. Out of these other teams, where else are you looking as potential favourites for the GC in particular?
I will have an eye out on Movistar because Marc Soler has seemed to be in decent shape, especially on Romandie, where so he won in Estavayer. I think he was like top 10 in Tion 2000 or Tion 2000. So he's a rider I'll keep an eye on out. But I think you have to look at the team DSM. I think coming into this Giro, you have Jai Hindley, who came second last year, who will be leading the team. But the supporting cast is very much decent. You got Nick Ascent, who will do a lot of work on the flat. You have Romain Bardet making his Grand Tour debut with his new team. I don't really know how he fits into the lineup. I don't know if he's a co-leader, is he a teammate, is he also having his opportunities? We know that DSM is usually a team that gives quite a lot of freedom to their riders because they know how to play on the Grand Tour. We've seen it last year on the Tour de France with the likes of Zoran Kraf-Andersen or Mark Hirschi. But the rest of the cast, you've got Nicholas Roche, very experienced rider. You've got Michael Storer. You've got Chris Hamilton. They're riders that know how to go over climbs. And I feel like Jai Hindley's performances last year won't be reiterated this year. But definitely keep an eye out for this team. I feel like they're going under the radar. And it's probably when they would like to be right now.
Yeah, I mean, they always seem to go under the radar a bit. I feel like I've been a bit underwhelmed with Hindley so far this season. But yeah, I mean, at a Grand Tour, he seems to come alive, at least from what we've seen of him so far. But yeah, I'm not convinced too much on DSM and Hindley and Bardet. I'd quite like to see Bardet go and hunt some stage wins. I feel like that's where he could find some success at this race. I don't know. Do you think he can challenge in the GC? I feel like the time trialling and maybe the consistent race days may be his downfall a little bit.
I don't know.
I don't
know. It's his Giro debut, and obviously, like from a French point of view, a French rider when he's good in mountain is linked immediately with the chances of winning the Tour de France. And I feel like the Tour de France is something Romain could not achieve because there's too much time trial, because the climbs aren't always that tough. So I feel like moving to the Giro is a very decent shout. I feel like it might be slightly too late though for Romain. I think like his last podium was 4 years ago now on the Grand Tour. And at the age of 30, he's in like technically his prime. But I don't know how he fits compared to like all of the other favorites. And the main question, I don't know how he fits into the team. I feel like if his role within the team was clearer, it would be easier to talk about his chances and opportunities on this Giro.
Yeah. I feel like he should be given a free element role at least, even if he's not their GC guy. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what Bardet can do. Apart from that, I'm trying to see if there's anyone kind of among the favourites we've missed. I think George Bennett maybe has a slim chance. Even Tobias Foss, we haven't seen probably enough from him just yet though, to say he can challenge for this race. And then of course we have the retirement home of the peloton, Trek Segafredo. They've got Nibali, Mollema, and Giulio Ciccone as a few options for them. But we know Nibali's got I think a fractured wrist, which he's just recovering from. And yeah, Mollema, we love Mollema here. I'm a big fan of Bauke Mollema, but he does always seem to have 1 or 2 off days at least. And I think he said he's looking to challenge for stages as well. But yeah, what do you make of Trek and Jumbo-Visma, Guillaume?
Jumbo-Visma, I'm going to watch them because we always see them usually on Grand Tours. But I think it's going to be refreshing to not see Jumbo-Visma just space at the front of the peloton and wait until like the final 500 meters of whatever stage it is, whether it's flat or mountain, to see someone sprinting, whether it is Van Aert or Roglic, or also Van Aert in the mountains. But I think they're going to have to race differently and to try and go for breakaways with the likes of Koen Boomen and potentially Eduardo Affeni. But in the mountain aspect, I'd say George Bennett is a candidate for a top 10, potentially top 7, but I don't really see him going higher. And regarding Trek Segafredo, I think we all would like to see Vincenzo do well. I feel like there's an element, as soon as a rider gets old and it's a rider we grew up with, we really want him to do well. I mean, the case of Valverde is probably like the best example of that. But I don't see Vincenzo performing. However, you did mention Bauke Mollema. Mollema, for me, is like the best rider to get the Polka jersey. or the I think it's the blue jersey for the man classification on the Giro. In my opinion, the Maglia Azzurra is Bauke Mollema's to lose.
It's a big shout, very big shout. I'd like to see him go for it, because what I don't want to see is Mollema go for a GC, waste 2 weeks, fall away slowly, and come 11th, which seems to be the story of his career a little bit in the GC. I know he had, I think, the 2016 Tour de France, where he was right up there for a little bit, but again, he fell away there. So, yeah, I mean, is Bauke going to get a GC result, GC podium? Probably not, but the Maglia Azzurra, like you say, could be a good option. But coming back to Jumbo-Visma, I mean, you say they're not going to be pacing at the front. We could see them pacing a little bit on the front for the flatter stages.
Oh, yeah.
Because...
Yeah, I meant on mountain.
Yeah, I know, but on the flatter stages, we have David Decker in their team, and also Dylan Groenewegen returning. So I'm attempting to do a segue to the sprinters here, Guillaume. But yeah, so Groenewegen and Decker are the sprinters for Jumbo-Visma. And I mean, who else do you think are the sprinters to look out for here?
I mean, realistically, the two names that come to mind when you take a look at the start list are Caleb Ewan and Giacomo Nizzolo on pure sprints. But we all know that the Giro sometimes had interesting finishes, so you have to throw in a Peter Sagan in the mix. And then you've got a few riders here and there. You've got the likes of Elia Viviani, the Cofidis, who's had his first win of the seasons, I believe, during the month of April. Maybe was it to end of March, start of April. You got Tim Merlier, who will be leading Alpecin Phoenix. Alpecin making their first ever Giro d'Italia, if I am correct, with a lineup without Mathieu van der Poel. So can't really expect much from them when it comes to anything except the sprints. But yeah, Tim Merlier, Peter Sagan, Viviani, Nizzolo, Caleb Ewan, who said that he wanted to win on all 3 Grand Tours this year. It's a bold statement, but I think with this start list, Caleb Ewan's definitely has a chance at winning at least one stage on the Giro d'Italia.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll win 1 or 2 in the first week, probably. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, are we going to see him finish the race? Almost definitely not, because there's a lot of mountains in the second and third weeks, and he, like you say, he wants to win at the Tour and the Vuelta, so he wants to take care of himself. I reckon we'll see Ewan bag a stage win and pack his bags after a few days of racing. But that could open up opportunities as well. I'm not sure what we'll see of Groenewegen and Decker, because Decker has looked good this year, and I guess he's going to be leading out Groenewegen now, is he?
Yes, I think he started this season thinking he would have a leadership position on the Giro d'Italia. And having Groenewegen jump on the Giro is either a very bad thing for Decker, because it kind of like ruins his hopes, but also you never know, because we've mentioned Evenepoel early on, just making his season debut, but it's going to be the same for Groenewegen. And what we said for Remco also applies to the Dutch sprinter, especially for a sprinter, in my opinion, because you really have you don't know what happens with your surroundings when you're sprinting on your own. Like, sure, training behind a car is nice, but it's not a peloton, it's not a mass sprint. And especially knowing that, he got suspended for an incident that happened during a sprint, maybe his mindset for the first couple of stages isn't going to be the killer mindset he's had, pardon my words, and maybe that's going to give like a shot to David Decker.
Yeah, maybe. Like you say, you don't know, and he doesn't know the impacts of obviously that crash with Fabio Jakobsen is going to have on him now, because it was a serious incident, as we know. He'd probably be a bit hesitant, you'd assume. It's only natural to be a bit hesitant after something like that, and after so long not racing as well. So yeah, that could, I guess, give some chances to Decker, which I would like to see. I'd like to see Decker given a few opportunities to sprint for himself, for sure. But yeah, I'm looking at Nizzolo, because Nizzolo somehow still hasn't won a Grand Tour stage. How is that still the case? I mean, he won, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago at the Giro on the final stage, but then he was disqualified after the finish for changing his line a bit, I think. I just don't know how this man is still without a Grand Tour stage win. Surely this is the Grand Tour he ends that kind of record.
It is odd, isn't it? It is odd. He's a 2-time winner of the Maglia of the Ciclamino, so the points jersey as well. which you would expect him to have won at least a stage, especially knowing that he's a very, very talented rider. But I think it's very similar to Michal Kwiatkowski last season, who got his first or his maiden Grand Tour win on the tour. Giacomo, I mean, he has to win. He has to win, and Kubica will be 90% of the time devoted to his sprint. I mean, they'll try to propel Pozzovivo in decent positions, but it's all for Giacomo, realistically. And I'm saying
I agree.
As soon as Caleb Ewan, parks his bags, Giacomo Nizzolo wins not only a stage, but the points classification is Giacomo's.
The disrespect, King Peter. Unbelievable. Now, to be fair, I agree with you. I think Nizzolo could come away with that jersey, but Sagan, it's what he does. He wins the points jerseys, although he didn't obviously at the Tour last year. But that's quite a big claim, to be fair. Although I would, like I said, it's a good shout because Nizzolo, he can handle the climbs probably similar to Sagan, unlike lots of these pure sprinters like Ewan, Merlier, Groenewegen as well. So yeah, I think that's a fair shout, to be fair, Guillaume. Although Peter Sagan is here.
He is. That is correct. He was on the Giro last year. He didn't win the points classification. He lost to Arnaud Desmarques, who was on another planet last season, to be fair to him. But I think Peter Sagan on his day is better than Nizzolo. Like, especially if we take a look, we'll take probably a quick look at the profile later on. But the third stage of the Giro between Biella and Canale screams Peter Sagan to me. But that's a stage where Nizzolo can at least aim for a second place. And I feel on like purely flat finishes, and there's a lot of them during this Giro, they suit Giacomo much more than they suit Peter Sagan.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, looking at the route, there are quite a few flatter stages which the pure sprinters won't have any issues with. There's quite a few that are very, very flat, which are clearly sprint stages. But we do get underway into Rome with a short time trial. And yeah, going into the final week, of course, we have a multitude of mountain stages. We've got the Zoncolan, I think stage 14 that is. We've got another climb as well, I think, on stage 17, the Sega di Ala, which is 11.5k, 9.5%. Just this Giro is just packed full of massive mountains, and yeah, it's going to be a fun parcours. I like the parcours overall, ending with a 30k time trial back into Milan on stage 21, which I always find interesting that it's not a procession on the final stage, that we have something to play for in the GC, at least on the final stage. So yeah, Guillaume, what do you make of the parcours overall?
I really like it. I've always been a fan of the Giro profiles because I think they bring something to the table that the Tour de France definitely doesn't. The Tour de France discovers landscapes, but most of the time you've got 250 kilometer stages that are somewhat boring, and the Vuelta is just mountain and hills constantly. I feel like the Giro does very well at having both, and there's a few stages that I'm definitely making, like they are on my calendar. The first mountain stage, obviously, which is on stage 6, because it's the first test for the GC riders. It's where you're going to see if Remco has the legs. It's where you're going to see if Simon Yates wasn't potentially too early in shape on the Tour of the Alps. And then stage 11, I think stage 11 is the stage everyone is going to watch because it is very similar to the 2010 stage 7. Sorry, the stage 7 of the Giro 2010 we had, but mainly it is extremely similar to the Strade Bianche, and the Strade Bianche are one of the most impressive races there are on the professional calendar, with Bernal taking 3rd place this year as well. So that's definitely a stage that becomes one to watch. And then the final week, you've got the Zoncolan, as you mentioned. You've got Cortina d'Ampezzo, which is always a very nice finish. And you've got the Sega di Ala. You've mentioned it, 11 kilometers, 9.5 of average gradient. I mean, I've heard from some sources that some people find it tougher than the Zoncolan. And with the Passo San Valentino before Sega di Ala, stage 17 could well and truly be where half of the riders don't win the Giro but lose it.
Yeah, if they've not lost it on the Zoncolan already, right? And then stage 20, the final mountain stage, we have the Passo San Bernardino, 23k, 6.5% as a small descent there as well. So really, it's about 7% for the majority on average. I mean, And that's only halfway through that final stage, that final mountain stage. We have so many opportunities for the climbers to attack. And what I like about the parcours is that the time trial comes at the end, which means the likes of maybe Mikel Landa, the other climbers in the GC that struggle more in the TT, they've got to attack, and they're going to make it really, hopefully, a great race to watch on those mountains. Which I'm really looking forward to. And you mentioned stage 11, Perugia to Montalcino, the Strada Bianca-esque stage in Tuscany. What a stage that is going to be! I cannot wait for that stage. If you watch one stage of this Grand Tour, I'd say it has to be this one, and that's crazy to say because it's not a mountain stage.
It's a stage that on paper doesn't seem that dangerous, but if something goes wrong, you can lose a lot on that stage. Like your entire plan of the Grand Tour can switch in an instant. A little puncture and you're finished. Final thing though, before we move to another point, regarding the time trial, the 30-kilometer one at the end. Usually on Grand Tours, such as the Tour de France, when you've got like the time trial on stage 20, the riders that are competing are often very decent time trialists. I mean, Roglic, Pogačar, Geraint Thomas, Chris Froome, even Alberto Contador back in the days. This year, out of all the GC riders we've mentioned, Joe, who do you think is the most gifted one in time trial? So I'm saying between Bernal, Vlasov, Landa, Carthy, and Yates. Who do you think can benefit from that time trial the most?
I mean, you didn't say Remco.
Exactly, I didn't say Remco.
Did you say Almeida?
I did not.
I mean, the Deceuninck guys love the time trial, obviously.
Yeah.
Apart from that, though, I can't see any of them really looking forward to that day. On their day, they can have a decent TT, but on paper, I mean, maybe Marc Soler, if he's up there still, could have a good TT. But to be honest, I can't see anyone really looking forward to that time trial among the guys you mentioned. Maybe Simon Yates, he can put together a fairly good TT on his day, and if he's got a lead in the GC at that point, I think he'll be fairly confident in holding it against those guys you mentioned. But yeah, Joao Almeida, if he's close, same with Remco, obviously. If those guys are close, they'll definitely make up time, I'm sure, in the TT. And even Peo Bilbao, I know they've got Landa, but if Bilbao is hanging around somewhere in the GC, he could make a move too in that time trial. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, that's the reason I didn't mention Deceuninck was because the answer would have been plain and simple. It would have been either Remco or Joao. Interesting that you mentioned Peo Bilbao. I actually didn't consider him in my options, mainly because they've got Landa. But because I've been trying to think for the past hour on who could benefit the most, and I don't see it. Like, because it's a 30-kilometer time trial, that's a stage you actually have to take into consideration, rather than like a 14 or 15-kilometer sometimes. So this is going to be it could be a crucial, you know what, it is a crucial stage actually of the Giro. It is a very crucial stage.
It really is.
The Giro isn't finished on stage 20 like it often is.
Yeah. I guess maybe Pavel Sivakov as well has occasionally proven that he can TT. And I see him really as one of Ineos's leaders. So I think Sivakov maybe is better than some of these pure climbers, but we'll see. It's all up for grabs, I guess. I think Hugh Carthy did a good time trial at the Vuelta last year, but that was quite hilly or mountainous, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a wall at the end.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, if everyone loses time in the GC, no one loses, right?
That's factually correct.
So Guillaume, we've discussed the favourites, we've discussed the parcours. I think it's time to make our predictions. Who do you think is going to win the Giro and be on the podium, the final podium of this Giro d'Italia?
I mean, the viewers can't see my face if you're watching on YouTube, and there's confusion and question marks right now appearing on me because I'm not sure. Realistically, I'm not sure. In third place of the 2021 Giro, I'll have Mikel Landa third. I'll have Simon Yates second. I'll have actually no, forget that. I'll have Bernal third, Landa second, and Yates first.
Wow. Simon Yates to win the Giro.
I'm just hoping he's carrying on his form of the Tour of the Alps. If not, and he often dips in the final week, then everything could be yet to play for. But the reason I'm not going for Bernal is I have way too many question marks regarding his fitness and his back injury.
Yeah.
If I knew more, I probably would have either had him as a clear winner or either out of my top three. But I feel like on what I currently know, I can't really make a bold claim and say he's going to win or he's going to be out. And Landa in third, I feel like Landa is a very, very gifted rider. He's got an incredible supporting cast, but he's got that one thing usually on Grand Tours that just doesn't go his way. And I'm scared it's going to be the case again. And should I give a top five? In fourth place, I'll have Joao Almeida. And in fifth place, I'll have Hugh Carthy.
It's interesting. I mean, to be fair, I'm fairly similar to you because in my third place, I actually have Pavel Sivakov of the Ineos Grenadiers. Second place, I've got Mikel Landa, and I do have Simon Yates winning the Maglia Rosa as well in a few weeks. So to be fair, we've both got Landa, we've both got Yates. I've gone for Sivakov though, whereas you've gone for the other Ineos Grenadier. And so yeah, I've got those top three, but apart from that, there's two riders I've got my eye on who I just cannot call and I cannot put in the top three because Remco hasn't ridden this year. I just cannot put him in the top three because of that. I think we were talking about it beforehand. I wouldn't be surprised if he won the Giro by 7 minutes. It wouldn't surprise me, but it's unlikely considering his obviously lack of form, lack of race days this season. And because of that, it makes it hard to put Joao Almeida on the podium as well because are they going to be riding for Joao Almeida from the beginning? No, they're not. They're going to be riding for Remco as well. So I can't call it. I'm not sure how De Koenig's race is going to go, whether it'll be Almeida, Remco, both. I'm not sure. So I can't put any in the top three, although I think those two guys definitely could be up there. But yeah, Landa and Yates seem to be our two main picks out of this, is what I'm seeing.
And should you give a top five? Who would be fourth and fifth?
Oh, I guess I'll go Almeida as well, fourth.
Okay.
Almeida / Remco. Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah, of course. So one you can come on. I'll allow it.
I mean, there's lots of good riders we haven't mentioned. Vlasov we haven't put in.
Yeah.
But I will go for Manny Bookman, fifth place. I think he's got some pedigree. He was close to the Tour podium as well a few years ago. Yeah, I feel like I'd like to see him do well too. I like Manny Bookman. And he's a very good 3-week Grand Tour rider. But yeah, that's the thing. It's so close and so hard to call, isn't it?
Regarding Buchmann, do you think this Giro is make it or break it? Because he's in a Boransro with that Stein Kelderman. You've got Lenny Kemner pushing through the ranks. And you've got Matteo Fabro, who seemed to be very decent earlier this year. If Buchmann doesn't perform on this Giro, what happens to him?
Well, what I would say, Guillaume, is about an hour ago, at the time of recording this, I've seen the news that Manny Bookman has extended his contract at Bora Hansgrohe until 2024.
Okay. I guess that answers it then.
Excellent timing. Because I think it's a good thing to do from Bora's point of view. They're giving Bookman, because like you say, it's a valid thought that that you're having right there, but Bora have tried to put it to bed, I guess, at least in Bookman's mind, showing their confidence in him ahead of this big Grand Tour. So I like that. I think Bookman, he's suited well at Bora, even if he's not winning Grand Tours every year, every other year. He's a very good rider, and I don't think it's a make it or break it for Bookman. He's had a shocking 2020, pretty poor 2021 so far as well. But I'd like to see him come to life a bit. When he's on form, he's so good going uphill. So yeah, I think Bookman could maybe get top 5, and that'd be a great result for him. So yeah, any outside picks that you think you perhaps wouldn't think of in the GC that you could maybe see in the top 10 or something?
I'm not sure about the top 10 because I feel like the start list is packed. I mean, we've got our top 5 given already, and I mean, you've mentioned Buchmann, but we haven't put Vlasov in our top 10. We haven't put anyone from DSM in our top 10, so that's Hindi and Bardet. We haven't put Marc Soler. We haven't put anyone from Trek Segafredo. So I feel like a top 10 position is tough to give But one rider I'm keeping an eye on, and I think I'd mentioned it earlier to you, is Matteo Fabro from Bora. Just in case Buchmann doesn't perform as well as he should, or as well as he probably expected, because he's had a very decent Tirreno. You've mentioned Prati-di-Tivo earlier today with Yates coming second. Fabro came in 7th place here, ahead of someone like Egan Bernal, and I think he was like border top 10 on the Tour of the Alps as well. So Matteo Fabro definitely has the legs, and I mean, the Boransbo team has Buchmann, Fabro, and Großschartner when it comes to the mountain element. And that's it. I feel like Fabro could potentially benefit from that scarce position or scarce amount of mountain riders. So yeah, I think he's my pick. I have another rider, but I know you also have the same, so I will let you take it away with, I believe, the leader of Androni.
Well, I've got 3 riders, but the rider you're talking about is, of course, Jefferson Alexander Cepeda, 22 years old, I think. From is he Ecuadorian? I think he's Ecuadorian for Androni. Yes, Ecuadorian for Androni, and we saw him ride very well at the Tour of the Alps recently. And I'm not sure what he can achieve. I think we'll see him probably drop out the GC, maybe go for breakaway stages or even the KOM jersey. But he's definitely a rider to look out for at this race and beyond. He, like you said, we both mentioned him before. Apart from that, maybe Clement Champoussin for AG2R, because they don't really have a GC leader, obviously, without Romain Bardet this year. Champoussin should be given a free role. I'm not sure what he can do, but again, maybe a stage win is in his reach. What do you think? Is that as a fellow Frenchman, do you think that's a valid claim right there?
As a fellow Frenchman, I do indeed think that Clement Champoussin has a card to play on a stage typically like stage 12 between Siena and Bagno di Romagna, or even stage 9. Quite a tough stage, but not the toughest one either. No, Champoussin definitely is a rider I'm keeping an eye out on.
Yeah, stage 12, Champoussin winning it. You've heard it here first, guys. Apart from that, I'd say Attila Volta, a rider obviously to look out for, and then one more I'll give, Quinten Hermans for Intermarché. I think when's the last time that team won a Grand Tour stage? I've no idea, but Quinten Hermans could be the man to do it for them at this Giro. He's ridden the Ardennes very well, so yeah, keep an eye out for Quinten Hermans.
So according to what you're saying, Wanty is going to open their win account on the Giro d'Italia. That's a very bold call. That's a very, very bold call.
It's massively bold, but if they do it, it will be with Quinten Hermans, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're gonna. I'm saying that Quinten Hermans will do it if they do it, because he's riding really well right now, and he's kind of suited, I think, to the difficult stages where it could be a sprint finish, but there's some hills beforehand, maybe from a breakaway as well. So yeah, Quinten Hermans, look out for him.
Yeah, I think Intermarché probably has a chance. You've mentioned Quinten Hermans. I'll quickly mention Andrea Pasqualon. He's 33 now, so he's not exactly a breakout rider, but I feel like he also is the type of rider that could go in the breakaway, kind of fitting the likes of Bardiani or Colnago at the time. Just breakaway, some hills with a flat finish. It screams Pasqualon.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Very fair point. He's ridden quite well, I think, this year too. I don't have any results to mind, but I think he's done pretty well after a recent dip.
I think he got a top 5 on the opening stage of Romandie, I think. Moving on to the final part of this podcast, we will just say who we think will be the first Maglia Rosa comes Saturday evening. We have a 9-kilometer prologue between Torino and Torino, and for favourites, we have quite a decent list. You've got the likes of Vitor Campenaerts, former European time trial champion. You have Jonathan Castroviero, former European time trial champion. But you also have Pipo Ganna and Rémi Cavagna. Now, earlier, like mid-April, I probably would have gone for Pipo Ganna. After Romandie, I believe my focus has changed, and I'm going to back a fellow Frenchman. I believe that Rémi Cave, the TGV of Clermont-Ferrand, as commonly known in France, will be the first Maglia Rosa of the Giro d'Italia.
I'm going the same way. It sounds crazy. I mean, if we told each other we'd be doing this a month ago, we'd have both said we're absolutely crazy. But Ganna, he won 9 time trials in a row. Since then, he was 3rd at Tirreno, then 9th and 10th at Romandy in the time trials. And I mean, Remy Cavagna, on the other hand, has been so consistent, always in the top 2, it seems, obviously winning that TT at Romandy. So yeah, I think we're in agreement there that Cavagna will be going into the Maglia Rosa after the stage 1 into Turin. But I think that will wrap up our Giro d'Italia 2021 Giro d'Italia preview. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, of course, drop likes, comments, follows, reviews, whatever platform you're on. Always really helps us out, and lets us know, of course, that you're enjoying the podcast. Let us know as well what you think and what you make of our takes. Let us know your takes as well. Who you think's going to win this year's Giro and what you make of our predictions as well. I'm sure we'll look back at them in a few weeks, Guillaume, with immense pride that we've absolutely nailed it with Yates and Landa in the top 2. What do you reckon?
I mean, our predictions as of this year have never been wrong. So I think now that we've mentioned it, now we said Yates is going to win it, Yates is actually going to win the Giro.
We'll see. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys. We'll see you very soon.
See ya.